Hey friends, welcome to the Radical Radiance podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca George, and I am so excited about this week's conversation. I sit down with my husband, Dustin George, to talk all about his chapter in his newest book, all about hope. So his newest book is called Before Dawn, Knowing God's Presence in the Dark Seasons of Life. If you've missed the last couple weeks of episodes, I would encourage you to go back and listen to him read the introduction of the book if you want a little sneak peek. And then last week we had a little bit of a behind the scenes conversation about how the book came together, and I know that one will be encouraging to you as well. But today is all about hope. So welcome, Dustin, back to the show. Well, hey everybody, I'm so excited to be back today for our first conversation about one of the chapters of Before Dawn, Knowing God's Presence in the Dark Seasons of Life. Dustin, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again.
I am so excited about these conversations we're going to have over the next few weeks. And listeners, if you are new to the show, you're just tuning in maybe for the first time, or you haven't listened in a while, we have two episodes that precede this one where, number one, Dustin reads the introduction of his newest book, Before Dawn. And then last week, we had an episode where we just kind of talked shop behind the scenes on how the book came together, a little bit more about the message of the book. And so make sure you tune into those episodes as well. But today, we are going to be talking about chapter 2 of Before Dawn. It's all about hope. And I love how you start this chapter. You start out by sharing a little bit about our Christmas traditions, one of them, and how much I love this season. We're about to walk into that season, so it's definitely my favorite time of year. And one marker that we're getting close to the holidays is something we did just the other day, where we will change out the scented candles on our coffee table.
Yep.
Yes, you did that just the other day.
I did.
Yes, which just builds anticipation and waiting. And you also reminisce in the beginning of the chapter about the arrival of a toy catalog that you and your brother got when you were a child. So glorious. And that was definitely a marker as well that the Christmas season was to come. And so these anticipatory moments in our lives are earthly reminders many times of what we would say we maybe hope for. I say that in air quotes. But in the book, you define hope biblically for us. I'm going to read your definition that you share in Before Dawn. It says, certain expectation of a positive future reality based upon the promise of God. And so will you share a little bit about how that kind of hope, defined biblically, differs from what we would consider an earthly hope?
Sure. Many times when we say the word or use the word hope, we're thinking about that. We almost use it in the context of wishful thinking, or we use it to indicate something that we're not really certain if it will come to pass or not, but we think that maybe it will, and we really, again, air quotes, hope that it does come to pass. And you find that notion of hope, the uncertainty and the lack of something that is truly predictable, and that leading to kind of maybe a vague expectation. When we look at earthly hope, it has all of those things. But then when you contrast that with biblical hope, you find it's a very different thing whenever we speak of hope from a biblical perspective.
So good. So good. I'm going to read your definition one more time. It says, a certain expectation of a positive future reality based upon the promise of God. And so you make a couple of statements in this chapter that kind of allude to some of what you were talking about. There's 3 of them. I'm going to read them for us. The first one says, hope is certain because it is rooted in the finished work of Christ. Number 2, hope is positive because God always does what is right. And then third, hope is an expectation because we can trust what God says about the future. And so I would just love for you to riff on that for a minute. How does this encourage us when we're living in a dark world, when we're looking at a future that seems uncertain?
Sure. To start off with, hope is certain because it is rooted in the finished work of Christ. Whenever we have earthly hope, it is rooted in, again, as I mentioned before, wishful thinking. It is rooted in past experience. It is rooted in best guesses. It's rooted in something that is not utterly and completely certain. But biblical hope, when we say, I know that I can have hope and I can trust, it's because of Christ's work, his death, burial, and resurrection. It is that redemptive work. So far as that is finished, now we recognize, and I've mentioned this in the book, that there is a coming restoration of all things. And so we understand that the outworking of that finished work is not seen just yet, but it will come to pass. So we trust his absolute finished work of redemption so far as bearing the wrath for our sins and then offering salvation by faith. And then you mentioned hope is positive because God always does what is right. And I would say that is likely one of the major sticking points for many people, because when we don't see the outcome or the immediate outcome that we expect, it's very easy to point a finger toward the heavens and say, God, why aren't you doing what I want? Why are you not operating according to my timetable? Why are you not, air quote, fixing this situation for me? If you love me, or maybe not even if you love me, if you are even there, why don't you do X, Y, Z? But with hope goes beyond that, and hope is able to say, because this is a work of God I am waiting on, God always does what is right. In that section, I quoted Deuteronomy 34, the rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are justice, a God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and upright is he. So, being perfect, God is always going to do what is right, which means if I fail to see that reality for what it is, this is not something of God that is diminished or something that is wrong with God. I'm a created being. I'm a fallible human. It's something of my perception, my understanding that is limited or maybe skewed, so that I am not seeing this perfect God in the way that he actually is. And then that last point you mentioned is hope is an expectation, because we can trust what God says about the future. And that's one of those things when someone makes a promise to us and then breaks a promise. We've all had that. When someone tells us, I will do this or that at this time or that time, you can count on me, and then they fail to follow through for whatever reason, be it accidental or intentional. But with God, you can trust what God says about the future. And with that type of hope, that's why we defined it the way that I did, a certain expectation. So, meaning we can be absolutely certain of this thing that is going to happen, and it is a positive future reality, meaning it's not here just yet, but it's based upon the promise of God. It's based upon God's word, which is unchanging and unshakable and dependable and trustworthy. And so that's the major difference, and certainly there are many nuances, but that's the major difference that I'm trying to show between biblical hope and the wishful thinking, worldly type of hope that we normally practice.
Yeah, that's so good. The Radical Radiance podcast is brought to you this month by Christian Standard Bible. Looking for the perfect gift for a friend or family member? Treat them to the most important book they'll read all year. The Christian Standard Bible has options for everyone. With a Bible for every age and stage, they have you covered. For ages 4 through 8, there's the Easy For Me Bible. For ages 6 through 12, the Explorer Bible for kids. For ages 8 through 12, Defend Your Faith. For ages 12 through 17, the Essential Teen Study Bible, and for ages 13 to 22, the Student Study Bible. And for parents and adults, they have the CSB Note-Taking Bible, Expanded Reference Edition, She Reads Truth, Men's Daily Bible, and many more. Browse their full holiday gift guide and get your whole family in the Word in 2025. The link is in the show notes. Now, back to the show. Those three things, it's certain, it's positive, and it's an expectation, because we can trust what God says about the future. And I think that encourages my heart so much when we look around at our culture right now. And the white elephant in the room also is we're going to be a few weeks post the election when listeners tune into this episode. And so as we think about hope, if you're coming into listening to this, we don't know the outcome of any of that as we're recording this episode, but no matter where you're sitting with that, as you tune into this episode, as we turn our eyes from earthly hope to truly a biblical view of that, those three statements have encouraged my heart so much. And so something else you talk about in this chapter that I think really is significant here is the times in our lives when it's God's will for us to quit something, to stop doing something. How do we discern these decisions and seek God for his wisdom in that as we look to the future?
Yeah, it's that section is very interesting, because the more I looked at the book and as I read through it, I realized that I had said nothing about when we should quit certain things. And by quit certain things, if you have already received a copy of the book and you've been reading it, you know what I'm talking about in this section. If you haven't, this section is not about avoiding sin or fleeing from some sort of temptation. I'm talking about when there is something that you are doing, maybe you're involved in it, it may be a relationship, it may be a job situation, it may be some vocational pursuit that you're involved in, and it may not be something that is, if we could say bad, it may be something that is good, but it is detracting from the best. And so you may be doing something, and you may be involved in something that is really awful, and that it is time to walk away, but you don't know, is it time to walk away? Is it not time to walk away? It may be something good that you're saying, I think this is a good thing, but the outlay of life, the outlay of time and effort that I'm putting into this, and I believe that God may be leading elsewhere. And so I talk about, are there times when you should quit? And the first thing that we must do, is that we focus upon Christ, and to the exclusion of all other priorities, we focus upon Christ. And if we do not have him as the center, and we do not have him as the priority, then nothing else is going to make sense. Nothing else is going to line up. One of my mentors, his name was, I mentioned this in the book, his name is David. David actually passed away just a few weeks ago, and I had the honor of preaching at his funeral. He told me when I started my first job in the ministry, he took me aside and he said, be prepared to spend the rest of your life wherever God sends you, but be ready to leave tomorrow if God calls you elsewhere. And so his wisdom helped me a great deal when it came to times to quit, times to continue. And it may be that it's just a hard season where we find it hard to find joy. And whenever you're doing something with joy, it's easy to continue if you're
Yeah.
finding such great joy in it. But maybe you're not finding that type of joy. You're not enjoying it. It's just hard. It becomes drudgery. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong thing. There's a whole chapter in the book on monotony where it's not joyous and exciting sometimes. And then if we ask ourselves, do I still have a burden for a particular thing? And one of the things that I have spoken to people about before is that I always encourage them, if they come to me and they talk about, I don't know, do you think I should stay? Do you think I should go? Do you think I should continue and press forward? Do you think I should go do something else? The question that I ask them, and it's the same question I've asked myself, have I finished what God has sent me to accomplish here?
Yeah.
And if the mission is done in a particular place, in a particular area, and you've done all that you can do and all that you are to do, then it may be that God has something else lined up. And there are different seasons. There are those, some of the hardest seasons that I've been through have been seasons of decision.
Sure.
Where you're trying to weigh, is this the right thing or is it not the right thing? That can be very, very disconcerting, especially if you're leaving behind family or friends or investment of years in an area. It can be really difficult, but you have to have God's wisdom in that. And I'm reminded of there was an evangelist whenever I was a kid, came to our church. And he was he was speaking of when he was wrestling with a major decision about following God. And he said that he went to the altar whenever, he said, I was a young man. He said, I went there in front of the church. And he said, it was one Sunday night and I was just praying. And I said, God, if you would just please give me direction. And he said that within moments he felt a hand on his shoulder, and it was one of the older members of the church, very well respected, very trusted, very wise, just leaned down next to him and began to pray for him, but just simply said, after he prayed, he said, just hang on, just hang on, and then went back to his seat. And he said that he was thinking about, okay, just hang on, I'm just supposed to hang on. And he said, and then he felt another hand on his shoulder. It was another older member of the church who leaned in and said, just let go, just let go. And he said, and then I was thinking, okay, do I hang on? Do I let go? And he said, and then he felt a third hand in as many times. He felt a third hand on his shoulder in turn. And he said there was this lady at the church who leaned in and said, just look for the light, son, just look for the light. And he said, between trying to figure out if I was supposed to hang on or let go, and all this time I spent looking for the light, I nearly missed the whole thing. And so there is a time for hanging on, and there is a time for letting go. I do think focusing upon the light of the world is the key to all of it. And then depending upon God's wisdom and waiting and watching and praying. And when it's time to make that decision, you make that decision. Let me ask, have you ever made, I know you're interviewing me, but this is pertinent to what we're speaking of. How many decisions have you made? And I would ask the listeners this as well. How many decisions have you ever made where you can say with certainty, you were 100% positive that is what you were to do?
Yeah. Weighty decisions in my life?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
None came with 100% certainty. I mean, even as you were talking, just memories were flashing in my mind of, the weighty decision, not that marrying you was weighty at all, but the cost of leaving everything that I knew, loved,
Sure.
and found comfort in here in Tennessee. What marrying you would mean for my life was a weighty decision.
Right.
us moving back up here to East Tennessee a couple of years ago, I think is probably one of the weightiest decisions, for sure the weightiest decision you and I have faced together.
Oh, yes, by far.
And I just think about the number of moments along the way that we were just begging God for his wisdom and just truly sitting in that meanwhile of, okay, I think you're doing something here, God. And I think you're calling us to leave, but is this where you're calling us to go? And so in the same breath, I can look back at some of those decisions, and I just named two. I could, if we had more time, I could name more, where those really drew me closer to the Lord and gave more reps of practice and truly entrusting the outcome, the decision, the means to God, you know?
Sure. Well, and think about it like this. No person has ever made a decision. And this is a big statement. I'm just now thinking of this. No person has ever made a decision like that with all the information.
No.
Simply because we're human.
Yeah.
Only God has all the information about every detail, past, present, and future, with regard to that specific decision and how that specific thing fits into his overall plan for all creation, for all time.
Yeah.
So only he sees every detail in absolute, perfect clarity.
Yeah.
So there's never been a decision that we make, there's never been a decision that we have made, nor will there be one we make, where we have all the detail. It's impossible. We can't. And so we have to say, based upon as much information as I have, based upon the leading of God by his word and by his spirit, based upon, look at my circumstances, look at this, look at the wisdom of other people that I trust, have my best interests at heart, and who have shown a practice of following God's leadership and who partner with me in prayer over those things. Given all of those things, what do I believe the next step is? But it won't be because I have every single detail, because I'm not God. No one is other than God.
Yeah. And I think in all of those challenging decision moments, without getting in the total deep end theologically, there's the tension of his sovereignty and our human responsibility,
Certainly.
which we see such at war, right? Is it our responsibility, or is it God's sovereignty? Yes. And we know that God is perfectly sovereign. So where it's not, I think I used to think of it as a spectrum, like where on the spectrum does the decision lie? Somewhere between my human responsibility and God's sovereignty. But I think the corrective in that is God is perfectly sovereign. That's never in question. And so as I partner with him and ask for his wisdom and his discernment, he grants us that, scripture tells us. But I think sometimes when we look at the grander view of that and what is God accomplishing in his overall redemptive plan, that can feel so weighty on us to the point where sometimes we swirl and we're so afraid of making the wrong decision.
Right.
And so if you're there today, I think I would encourage you to go back to some of the things that Dustin has kind of said along the way here of partnering with other people in prayer, leaning on wise counsel, on his word, on spending time in prayer as you seek your next step for that decision. But that tension just comes to mind for me as we're talking about this, because I know I've felt that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned it's easy to get into that vicious cycle of, well, how much of this is God's sovereignty, and how much of this is my responsibility, and round and round and round and round. And that's not the intent.
Yeah. And that's not for us to completely understand this side of eternity.
And the beauty of God's sovereignty is that we have the freedom to operate in his sovereignty and trust him and obey him and allow him to guide us. And without having all of the information about every single thing and being okay with that, because we really don't, we really don't have, we do not have nearly as much control as we think we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a relief in one way.
Absolutely.
It's terrifying in another, but it's an opportunity to trust God in.
Yeah, so good. I love that. Well, this was one of my favorite chapters in Before Dawn, which is why I wanted to talk about it today. And I'm super excited for the next couple of weeks. We have 2 more episodes where we're going to talk about the chapter on dependence and the chapter on perseverance. So I'm excited to share those conversations with you. But before we go, I want to just repeat the full title of the book one more time, let you know how you can connect with Dustin, grab the book after this conversation. The full title of the book is Before Dawn, Knowing God's Presence in the Dark Seasons of Life. You can grab it on Amazon now. Go grab a copy for a friend. I'll also share that we have made it really easy to walk through this book in a book club, a life group, a small group type of setting. So you'll notice when you get the book that at the end of every chapter, there's some sections for ideas for consideration, questions for discussion, scriptures for reflection. We've pulled all of those pieces together in a free downloadable PDF that can be available to you and your group on Dustin's website at dustingeorge.com. And similar name and handle over on Instagram. You are the most active over there at Dustin C. George. Anything else you want to share before we head out today?
No, I think that's it. As we've mentioned in a previous episode, my prayer is that this book, that we talk about God's sovereignty, that God orchestrates everything as he sees fit to get this book with this message into the hands of exactly the people who need it most.
Amen. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. If you have not already, go grab your copy of Before Dawn, Knowing God's Presence in the Dark Seasons of Life on Amazon today. You can go down to the link in the show notes and grab that. And we cannot wait to be with you for these next 2 weeks as we talk about 2 more chapters in the book. Next week is all about dependence, and we will chat with you then.